Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anchor Holds. My name is Latoya, and we are going to continue our study into the life of Jacob. But before we get started, let's pray. The entrance of thy word gives light. Lord, I pray that as I open my mouth, that I will speak with boldness and clarity, that your word may be a lamp unto my feet and bring illumination to my path. Open my heart and my mind and my thoughts to receive your word. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Before we get started, let's recap back into Genesis 30. Rachel had finally had a child, and after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, we see that Jacob now decided that he wanted to move back to Canaan. And before he do that, he had to ask permission. He had to ask Laban's for approval before he could leave Laban's residency. And I was really curious, like, why Jacob, a grown man, would ask Jacob why he didn't just pack up and leave without consulting with Laban first, especially when we see that Laban treated him unfairly. And I was like very intrigued why he went the route that he did. But upon further research, it stated that it was the custom in Eastern extended family, as it is still today in some Eastern cultures, that it was a shared ownership of Jacob's wives and children between him and Laban. And to leave without Laban's approval and blessing could lead to outright war within the family clan. And that would even cause more drama into their ongoing family dynamics. Also, I was curious on the method Jacob was using with the reproduction of the flock. And it was believed that by placing visuals before the animal as they were mating, it was possible to influence the appearance of their offspring. And now we're going to dive into Genesis 31 to see what we will discover as we dissect God's word. And today's title will be The Great Escape, Jacob versus Laban. As he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob had taken away all that our father had, and that which was our father's had he gotten all this glory. And we can see here there's some tension going on between Laban's son and Jacob, because now we see, based on the last verse of chapter 30, and it said, and the man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maidservant and menservant and camel and asses. So when Laban's son, they see Jacob rise, and he just came into this world, this massive possession of cattle and all this wealth with maidservant, manservant, and all this stuff, that there was contention between Laban's son and Jacob. And they were saying that, and he heard the word. So Jacob heard the word. Like, I was wondering, is this the fairy? Is this the, what I would say? I would say the rumor fairy probably was going around. Maybe people were talking because maybe everyone was shocked at what was like, oh, Jacob finally come into possession of all those flocks and the servant and everything that he currently have in his possession. So everyone was probably curious, in such a short span, he was able to amplify, he was able to multiply, and now he have this wealth that he never had prior. And the rumor was Jacob had taken, so the son, the rumor they had going around that Jacob had taken all that belonged to their fathers. And in the Bible, the Bible tells us that we are supposed to leave an inheritance for our children's children. So hearing Jacob seemed like he have taken possession of everything, and that didn't sit too well with Laban's son. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban and said, behold, it is not toward him as before. So this wasn't just Laban's son that they were not towards Jacob anymore. Evil Laban. So the son, they had poisoned Laban with the words that they have spoken, that Jacob had stolen everything that belonged to their father. And when Laban heard all this stuff, like, you think probably he would go probably have a conversation man to man with Jacob, but no. When he heard the rumor from his son, it said that his countenance, so his appearance that he had before to Jacob, where we see earlier that he was saying that to stay with me with the flock and everything when Jacob decided to leave, and he was pleading with Jacob to stay. But now we see, because of the rumor, and as a parent, like, would you take your son-in-law's side over your son? No. Most likely you're going to choose your own children over your son-in-law because they're your own flesh and blood. So Laban, when his son said that, like, his appearance, his countenance, like if he was jovial towards Jacob, no, it had drastically changed. And Jacob could tell, because sometimes when somebody is against you, like if they used to talk up to you and do certain things with you, and all of a sudden they change, then you can see that change in their outward appearance. Sometimes it can be in the way they talk and do certain things that you can see, like their attitude towards you has changed, their appearance to you, the way that you used to interact, it has drastically changed. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And we see when all this stuff is going on, God is saying to Jacob, before this probably escalates into something more, remove yourself from this situation, return, go back. You probably have already overstayed your welcome. Go back unto the land of thy fathers, and thy father is mentioning Abraham and Isaac, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So God is giving Jacob an assurance, like, don't worry about what Laban and his family is saying, the rumor going on. Go back where you came from. I will be with thee. The thing is, like, it was that Jacob even not taken Laban, anything that belonged to Laban, because they had an agreement. And when they split, when Laban take his flock and Jacob take the defective flock, we see that in over the time when Jacob had those flock, that God multiplied. It was a divine strategy that God gave Jacob when he put the thing in front of the cattle, and they were able to produce, and his flock increased. So that was a divine strategy that God had given Jacob. And in that moment of time, we see that as Jacob well increases, then Laban well diminishes, and which was Jacob well was no, with his increase, it was in proportion to Laban's wealth. So now Jacob had take all the defective stuff, which was the least amount, because Laban is not gonna, with an agreement, he's not gonna take the least amount of stuff. He is the initial owner, and therefore he's gonna want to take the bulk of the flock. So it was through God's divine intervention that Jacob was able to be on the same playing field. He was now in proportion with Laban when it comes to wealth, because he had increased in everything that he currently had. And you could say that Laban's son, they were filled with envy. And we know that when envy, we see that prior with Rachel and Leah, when Rachel was envious of Leah when Leah was having children and she was barren, and it shifted family dynamics a little, where there was fighting going on between the two sisters, where they were competing against each other, and this was not a friendly competition. He was trying to see who could outdone who with having more children. And when envy tends to distort the truth and give you an incomplete truth. So when Laban's son said Jacob had taken all, they were not telling the truth. That was an incomplete truth that they were telling. And if you read back also, like the book within book of Samuel, when Saul, he was the king at the time, and he had a good relationship with David. But the moment that they say Saul has slain his 1,000 and David 10,000, then we see immediately that relationship between Saul and David automatically switch. Now Saul become jealous. Now Saul become envious because he was a warrior, and David, as a young shepherd boy, now they are giving him more accolades than the king, and the king didn't like that. So we see that Saul was envious. He was jealous of David because of what the people had said, that Saul has claimed his 1,000 and David 10,000. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock. Now we see that, before Rachel and Leah, they were in a competition. But now when Jacob called, he called them because this is a family affair. This is going to impact both Rachel and Leah. So remember, when you get married, you are one. So Jacob now is getting his wife. He didn't just call Rachel by herself, but he had a family emergency. He had a family meeting with both his wife. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it's not toward me as before, but the Lord of my father had been with me. And we know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. Jacob is letting Rachel and Leah know, just in case you are not aware, I have been serving your father for 20, maybe over 20 years. And now all of a sudden his countenance is not with me as it was before. And I know that with all my power. So Jacob and Laban already knew this, because when Jacob spent the first month with him, he saw the person Jacob was. He saw that Jacob was a really hard worker. And that's why he didn't want Jacob to just work for nothing. He wanted to pay Jacob his wages for the work that he was doing. And we see previously in chapter 30 that Laban was saying that I have, through divination, I was able to see that everything that I currently have in my possession is because you are with me, because God has blessed you. Now I am reaping, I am a product of that blessing that God has placed on you. Because everything that Jacob touched, because God was with him, he was able to expand, multiply Laban's cattle. And Laban was able to see that. But now, because of the rumor that is going on between Laban's son and what they're saying about Jacob, like Jacob is no longer with Jacob. Laban is no longer taking sides with Jacob. And Jacob is saying, maybe, I don't know if Jacob prior he had let his wife know his encounter, like the experience that he had with their father. Maybe he didn't do that. But now you see that there's a shift within Laban. So now he's like letting them know exactly what is going on. And he said, your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. So Imagine it was not Laban keep deceiving Jacob time and time again. And I'm guessing Laban probably was under the assumption that through all this deception, Jacob was not aware, and that's why he was able to get away with it 10 times, because Jacob, we know what he deceived Jacob with the cattle, and we know he deceived him with marrying his 2 daughters, but we are not aware of the other 8 times. But Jacob is making it known unto us that it was 10 times in total that Laban had deceived him. But God suffered him not to hurt me. So in the midst of everything that Laban is doing, God had allowed him not to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckle shall be thy wages, then all the cattle will bear speckle. And if he said thus, the ringstake shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstake. Thus God had taken away the cattle of your father and given them unto me. We read in the Bible that when a man ways pleases the Lord, he make even his enemy be at peace with him. See, Laban doing all this corruption, all this injustice to Jacob. And you know what he said, touch not my anointed and do my prophet no harm. So Jacob is a servant of God, and here Laban is trying to deceive God's servant. And he didn't just do it 2 times, but he did it like 10 times. And God see the injustice that Laban was doing to Jacob. So Jacob now is saying, although what Laban meant for evil, God had turned it out into good. God had turned it out into my favor. And because of what he did, maybe if Laban did it and he repented and stopped doing it, like, okay, the first time, 2 times, but no, 10 times, then you still have to learn your lesson. You're still trying to be deceptive. And Jacob is like, God has taken away the cattle of your father and given them unto me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, then I lifted up my eyes and saw a dream, and behold, the ram which leaped upon the cattle were ringstake, speckled, and grizzly. Now we know why Jacob came up with that, why he chose those flock. Because prior I was like, oh, did Jacob have the witty idea to say, I will pick the speckle, the ringstake, and the ringstreak cattle out of the flock that Laban had? How? But here he's giving us the answer that it was through a dream. And we know that God, back in those days, most time when he speak to the prophet, when he speak to his children, it was through dreams. And it was through that dream that Jacob was able to pick those cattle out of what Laban initially had. And it came to pass that the cattle conceived, and I, lift up my eyes and saw a dream, and behold, the rams which leap upon the cattle were ringstake, speckled, and grizzly. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstake, speckled, and grizzly. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. This would almost seem like when God was talking to Abraham, where he said, when Abraham and Lot, they were together, and there becomes some contention between Abraham and Lot because their flock had expanded, and there was not enough grass to feed both their cattle. And Abraham was like, I don't want any contention to be between the two of us. Everything is before your eyes. Pick what you want. And we see that Lot, he looked and he picked the good side, which is this area of Sodom and Gomorrah. And when Lot departed from Abraham, then God was like, lift up your eyes. No, he was able to see the vision. He was able to see what God had initially said to him, what God had told him that would happen to him, that he would increase in wealth and things. And one thing I am glad to, I am the God where the anointed. So before Jacob had ran away to Laban's place, he had made a vow to God that if God will bring him back safely, he's going to make like God is God forever. So God is reminding Jacob of the promise that he had made when he was on the run. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there yet any portion of inheritance for us in our father's house? So Rachel and Leah, they are in agreement. They saying, are we not counted of him strangers? For he had sold us and had quite devoured also our money. So Rachel and Leah are in agreement with Jacob's assessment that after all their father Laban had stolen their inheritance, he had treated them like foreigners. He had sold them and used up all the money that they had received for their bride price. And they were like, we feel like we're foreigner, we're stranger. It's like we don't even recognize this person who is our dad anymore. For he basically had sold us. It's like we were priced to him. He didn't really care. All he cared about was probably that money. For all the riches which God had taken from our father, that is ours. So Rachel and Leah was saying, everything that God has taken from our father, it's because of the injustice that he did to you, and he did to us as well as his children for not treating us the way that he is treating his sons. And that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God had said unto thee, do. Rachel and Leah was like, we are done. We are not doing this power struggle with our dad. So whatever God had tell you to do, we as a family, we're going to be in accordance. We're going to be in union. We are going to support whatever it is that God tell you to do. Then Jacob rose up and set his son and his wife upon camel, and he carried away all his cattle and all his good which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting which he had gotten into Padan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. It seemed like Jacob, no, even though he asked for permission, it seemed like he is doing a secret mission to go without getting Laban to say, yes, you can leave, because he had asked prior and Laban didn't want him to go. And we see they had come up with an agreement that Jacob will take care of Laban's flock, but they were going to split the flock. So now when Jacob see like the countenance of Laban had changed towards him, Jacob is like, no, I'm just going to up and leave. I'm not going to even ask for permission anymore. And Laban went to share his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the image that were her father. We know that Laban, they worship not the one true and living God. Why Rachel, like, of everything that you have to stole? So you just say, you and Leah just say that whatever God tell you to do, you will do. But no, you're going to steal his image, which is idol, which is God. For all the riches which God had taken from our father, that is ours, and our children, know whatsoever God had said unto thee, do. So she probably just saying, you do it, Jacob. That doesn't apply to me. And Rachel is being sneaky because she didn't do it while her father was there. She went until he went out to share the sheep. Then she went and stole the images. So she didn't even take one. Probably she take all of the images. She's like, if I'm leaving, I need something to worship. I need to have our gods with us. And it was told Laban, and Jacob stole away unaware to Laban the Syrian, and that he told him that he fled. He told him not that he fled. So Jacob, he secretly went away without Laban knowing that he was leaving on this specific day. And Laban was unaware that Jacob and everything that Jacob had, his sons and his daughter, his grandson, no, not his sons, but his grandson, his granddaughters, daughters, and Jacob, they're all gone. And it was told Laban, you see, Laban have these rumor theory going on. They know everything that is going on. So probably the servant that were left behind that belonged to Laban, they probably see Jacob and his family just up and leave. So Laban is now aware of that. So now it was told Laban. So on the third day, here we go again, we see the third day. It was Laban did a 3-day journey between him and Jacob when they separate the flock. Now we see here again that on the third day that Jacob had fled. Why the third day? I don't know the significance. And we know that it said it was where it was nearly 300 miles from Haran to the mountain of Gilead. Jacob traveled with the knowledge that Laban might be pursuing him from behind in order to kill him. And also, he's running away from Laban, but then you don't know if Esau still have that mindset of wanting to kill him. So he's probably they would say in Jamaica, jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. So you're running from one evil, probably run into another evil. And when Rachel sealed her father's household, the idols, they're like small figurines, because if it was something big, she couldn't be able to pick up a big image without it being noticeable. So it had to be something small that she took from her father. And for the reason why she stole it, like, we have no idea. Probably for protection, good fortune, or whatever, she probably stole it. And he took his virgin with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the mount of Gilead. So Jacob is moving. We know Jacob have a growing family. He have young children that he's traveling with. He's traveling. Rachel had previously given birth to Joseph, so probably they have to do a lot of stuff because of his family and the young kids. And I don't know if you have ever traveled with kids. So sometimes you travel with kids and your children, and you have to stop because sometimes they get like a little fussy and stuff, and you have to stop, get them back into that calm state, and then you can continue with the journey. So maybe Jacob had to do like a lot of stopping within that time period. So although he put a 3-day gap between him and Laban was finally able to caught up to him. And it took 7 days for them to finally meet together. And we know that Laban was going with the mindset that he is going to do something to Jacob, because he probably saying, Jacob have the audacity, he have the nerve to just up and leave without even telling me. And Laban probably wasn't having that, especially with the rumor prior that was going on that he had stole everything that belonged to Laban. And God came to Laban the Syrian. You know, every time prior before they were mentioning Laban, they just mentioned Laban, but no, they're being very specific. They keep addressing him as Laban the Syrian. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob, either good or bad. As I mentioned earlier, that prior when, and God still speak to people in dream, but we see that when Jacob get this with the idea, it was through a dream, and now God is speaking through Laban, the Syrian, in a dream, saying, now that you have caught up with Jacob, do not open your mouth to speak either good or bad. And then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done that thou hast stolen away unaware to me and carried away my daughters as captive taken with the sword? Laban is like, what is this you do? Like, you are running away like you stole something. You have stolen, like, he's like, you went away like a thief. You went away stolen that thou hast stolen away unaware. You went away without even saying, Laban, I'm leaving. Nothing, no goodbye, nothing. He's like, and the nerve of you ran out, you carry away my daughters as captive. No, they wanted to leave you too because they agree with Jacob, like whatever you do, whatever God tell you, do it. So they were on board. It's not like they just didn't inform you. You were just unaware of what was discussed. And you have taken, it's like, when you take something captive, you put them, sometimes it's like you take them captive like with a sword, so they have no say in the matter. It's like you take them away without their permission. You were taking them away like they had to go with you. They didn't have a choice. And wherefore did thou flee away secretly and steal away from me, and didst not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with song and tabret and with harp? You know what? Every time Laban come up with these the good idea fairies, like it never worked out in Jacob's favor. He's like, if you had told me, I would have had a celebration. I wouldn't just let you go like that. I would have done something and send you away in the proper way. But no, you just up and leave. So I couldn't even send you away without a celebration. And as thou suffer me to kiss my sons and my daughters, so here he's making reference to Jacob's children and his daughters, thou hast not done foolishly in doing so, because as I stated earlier, in Eastern culture, you have to get the father's approval before you can just up and leave, because it was like there was a 50-50 custody between Jacob and Laban for his wife and the son that he bore. They were like because of their culture. And Laban is like, what you did, like, you have done foolishly. Like, this doesn't make sense, because if God didn't speak to Laban, Laban basically saying to Jacob, this could have caused you to lose your life because of what you did, because that is not the norm. That is not our custom. Just like he said, it's not our custom for the younger to marry before the older. So this was their custom, that you don't just up and leave without getting the proper approval, authority to leave. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesterday night, saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Laban is like, you better be thankful that your God had came to me in a dream and spoke to me, because if he didn't, the plan that I had for you, I was going to hurt you. But God intercede on your behalf, and he tell me that I cannot speak either good or bad to you. And Jacob, and now And now though thou wouldest need be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my God? Laban is like, okay, you long to go to your father house, then go, but why take my gods? You are going to your father house to serve your God, but no, you have to take my gods with you. And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughter from me. Jacob is saying, I was scared, so the reason I left sneakingly, or I left without first telling you that I'm leaving, was because I was scared that you would have probably just sent me away by myself. Everything that I have earned, because it's a 50-50 custody, everything that I have earned while I was with you, I was scared that you were going to take, by force, you were going to take your daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest the gods, when Laban is saying, taking my gods, Jacob is like, I know we up and leave, but to take your gods when I know the God of my father and my grandfather, like, I know he is the one true and living God. Like, why would I take your God? And with whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee, for Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen. You know what? That's why sometimes they tell us that we need to be quick to hear and slow to speak, because Jacob, it's not Rachel took the gods, but I'm sure she didn't tell Jacob what she did. And Jacob was probably mad at Laban for this accusation, saying that you steal my God. So Jacob is thinking to himself, I don't think nobody in my companion, I don't think anybody within my family have stolen Laban God. So he speak hasty, he speak out of haste and said, like, if you find your gods, let not that person that you find your God with live. And it said, for Jacob knew not. And that's why that Rachel had stolen them. That's why they say communication is key in a marriage, because if Rachel had told Jacob, Jacob would not have hastily said what he said. He probably would have, if he probably even knew that Rachel was going to take those gods, he would have told her to leave them behind. But he is unaware, and because he's unaware that his beloved Rachel had stolen the gods, that he passed that judgment. And you know what they said? Life and death are in the power of the tongue. So when Jacob said, let that person die and not live, he was unaware that it was Rachel. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservant tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Laban is like, I am going to find these gods, because of all the time that I have had my gods, nothing have went wrong with them. But no, you came, you are leaving, and all of a sudden they disappear. So he start doing a search to find out where his gods are. And he searched, you see, maybe Rachel is beloved daughter, because he searched Leah's tent first, then the maidservant, then he searched, no, Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them, and Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. Rachel is clever. She's like, man, if my father found these gods, probably there was some repercussion, and she hid them, that he searched everywhere and he couldn't find, or he searched in the spot or the place that he think it would be. I'm sure he's not expecting it to be in the camel's furniture. And she said to her father, "Let it not be displeased, my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of woman is upon me." And he searched, but found not the images. And the custom of woman that Rachel is making mention, it was a woman when they were having their menstrual. It was, we know in Jewish culture that we have learned, are what we have learned so far in the Bible, that it was, they were considered unclean, and anything that they had and you touched it, then that person also become unclean, and they would have to 7 days, they were unclean for 7 days, and then they had to wash and be made clean. So Rachel is like, the custom of woman is upon me, so yeah, we can't do this right now. Whereas, and Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, "What is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me?" Like Jacob is like, what is wrong? I need to know, because you have the nerve to chase me, but then you have the audacity to be going through my things, searching all my possession, to think that I stole your God. So like, he is very angry and upset with Laban. And I'm sure they exchanged some words. There was some words exchanged between the two. And Jacob is like, "Where hast thou searched all my stuff? What hast thou found of all my household stuff? Set it here." So you did this search like you are some detective. Show me what you find. So if you say that I stole your gods, I want to see the evidence, and set it before my brethren and thy brethren, that way they can judge betwixt us both. Jacob is like, if you find the stuff, I don't want you to keep it a secret. If I take your stuff, or if my people take your stuff, I want you to put it between your brethren and my brethren, so they can judge betwixt the two. And this 20 years, so Jacob now is like, this 20 years I have been with thee, thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. Jacob is like, although I have been with you all this time, everything that you had, I have not taken anything that belonged to you. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. My hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Jacob is saying to Laban, with this contract that we had when I was taking care of your sheep, your flock, if anything go missing, you didn't say, oh, I will fault it to this. The blame was on me. I had to restore that which was lost. Like, I bear the loss. I didn't say, okay, since we are family, no, I'll take the blame for any loss, because Jacob basically didn't want Laban to have anything over him. And it was also that Laban required. So even if Jacob probably didn't want to do it, Laban requires, so that was a requirement. If anything was lost, like, Jacob would have to take the fault. He would be in the deficit for anything that was lost, anything that was stolen, anything that died. Jacob would be in the deficit. He had to bear that loss. Thus I was in the day thy drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from me. While I was living with you, I wasn't living a pleasant life. I had days where the drought, it consumed me, because in the Middle East, you know, there's the temperature, the climate is different, and it can be very hot and humid, especially in the summertime when it can get up into like 120 something degrees. So that is gonna, without those type of climate, then it's gonna produce drought. And Jacob was like, the drought consumed me. I even have like staying out because those places tend to be very hot during the day, but then at night it get like really cold. And Jacob was like, and the frost by night and my sleep. So I was restless. I wasn't having like a pleasant time with you. It was like I am working as a servant. You didn't treat me like as a child of you. You didn't treat me like your son-in-law. You treated me as like I'm your servant. And thus have I been 20 years in thine house. I serve thee. So Jacob giving us a breakdown of how long he has been with Laban. I have been in your house for 20 years. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. So Jacob was probably saying, you probably thought I didn't know, but over this 20-year period that I've been with you, you have not changed my wages once nor twice, but 10 times you have changed my wages. And Jacob is like, except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Surely thou hast sent me away now empty. God had seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. Jacob was like, God has seen everything that you have done. Maybe others haven't seen. You probably did things behind my back. You did things in the dark that you thought was visible to the human naked eye. But guess what? God had seen all this injustice that you were doing it unto me. And Jacob was like, if it wasn't for God, you would have worked me to the bone, and then you would have the audacity, you would have the nerve that I have served you for 20 years. I have expanded your flock, and you would have sent me 20 years like I did nothing. But God saw the injustice, and because God was in the midst, God was behind everything Jacob was doing, then Jacob was like, God didn't send me empty-handed. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters. They were your daughter, but now they are married, so you got to cut the umbilical cord here, Laban. And these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto thee, my daughter, or unto their children which they have born? Laban basically said, everything you have in your possession, the children are mine. My daughters, they are mine. The cattle, they are mine. Everything you have belongs to me because I am the sole owner of everything that you have. Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant. Let us make an agreement between the two of us. I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stone, and they took stone and made an heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar-Shaduat, but Jacob called it Galid. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galid. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. This is an agreement that we are going to go our separate way. But let's make a covenant. Let's have something as a witness between your brethren and my brethren that this was a covenant that was made between Jacob and Laban and Mizpah. So one called in Gilead, one Mizpah, for the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wife beside my daughter, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. Laban is saying, okay, let's make this covenant, but when we make this covenant, these are going to be the stipulation that is included into the covenant. And we see, if thou shalt afflict my daughter, if you hurt my daughter, if you try to do anything unethical or immorally wrong to my daughter, others probably can't see what you're doing, but guess what? God is going to be the witness between the two betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar. Also, when he said this in verse 50, if thou wilt afflict my daughter, or if thou shalt take others' wife beside my daughter, you know what came to my mind? Remember, Rebekah and Laban, they are brothers and sisters. And when Rebekah was leaving to go to Isaac to be his wife, then they kind of said something similar to this, that he shall not take any other wife except his sister. They sent her off like with a blessing and stuff like that. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over this heap on this pillar unto me for harm. So this covenant that we're making, if for some reason in the foreseeable future you have it in your mind that you are going to cross this path and come to do me harm, God is our witness that upon this heap that we make a covenant that we will not pass each other, we will not cross boundaries, and we will not cause harm to each other. So this is a covenant between you and me, but God is watching, and God knows the covenant that we make together. The God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. Now Laban want to bring in Jacob's father, and he also want to bring in his father, so the grandfather. They are a judge betwixt us. And Jacob offers sacrifice, and Jacob swear by the fear of his father. And Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread and tarry all night in the mount. This would seem like when Jesus, he had all his disciples together, and he had that last Passover meal with them, that he called them together, and they did break bread and eat. And early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his son and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. And when it made mention and said, early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his son, this is Laban kissing his grandson. But as I mentioned earlier, that it was like a 50-50 deal, the way the culture was. So Jacob's sons, they were also considered as Laban's sons. So these weren't Laban's biological son. These were his grandson that he considered as his sons. And he kissed his sons and his daughter and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. And we come to the end of chapter 31. We know that no matter what things may seem, that God is still control. God is working things in our favor. Sometimes what people meant for evil, God turned it into our favor. God is working non-stop behind the scene. He is always doing things that sometimes we don't even understand. We're even unaware. But God see all the injustice that was done unto Jacob, and God reward Jacob for the injustice that Laban was doing unto him. I hope that this message resonates with you. Remember that God loved you with an everlasting love. Stay blessed. Have a wonderful day. Until next time.